Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another edition of WOWsA Live with our host, Ned Denison, and a very special guest. Ned?
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. We have one of our honorees with us today, Dr. Julie Bradshaw MBE. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you very much, Ned and Steve. Lovely to be here.
Julie, you, before they changed the rules, you did the English Channel at age 15 back in 1979. Tell us kind of how that came to be. Was it a childhood dream, the influence of the BLDSA? You know, how did you even know about it?
Well, I'd always been good at quite a few sports, in particular swimming, and the colder the water, the better it became. And at the time, my parents did a lot of caravanning up in the Lake District, which is, as you know, where Way Windermere is. And one day I went down one of the swimming pools, Troutbeck Bridge actually, and I saw a sign saying Cross Windermere. So I entered it, and that really began everything. Well, I was about 12 then, 1976 then, crikey. So from there, what happened is I did the Cross Windermere, but I was very, very scared. Used to go practicing in a rowing boat, and I used to swim it, my worst stroke, head up breaststroke, because I was a little bit scared. So that year I won it, and then I just came back when I was 14, developed obviously into front crawl, and decided to swim the length of Windermere, which I did at the time in 4 hours 38 minutes, which was a British junior record. And then from there it just went to my parents one day and said, Mum, Dad, I want to swim the Channel, and it all began from there. Yeah, so I was 15 when I eventually swam the Channel first time.
So to swim the Channel at such a relatively tender age, how do you think that influenced your life?
It's been, swimming's just underpinned lots and lots of my life, not just from a swimming perspective, in my work, in relationships with people. It's been the pinnacle, it's the underpinning of everything. When I was at school, as I say, I was good at every sport, and I was pretty quiet at school, pretty shy. When I started swimming and achieved a Channel swim, my confidence grew, and from there, everything else followed. I was a member of the BLDSA, which is obviously, as you know, the British Long Distance Swimming Association. They had a lot of junior events at the time, and I entered them, enjoyed it just before my first Channel swim in 79. So crikey, it seems like yesterday, but it's many, many moons ago. In fact, it was my 40th anniversary last year. How time flies, eh?
And the Channel Swimming Association does a special presentation at 50, so you can mark your calendar now.
Well, let's keep going then, eh? Lots to do in the meantime.
It looks like you took a break for about 10 years for marathon swimming. What brought you back?
Well, I'd always swam. The thing was, when I was younger, I'd swam the Channel when I was 15, did a fastest British junior record in 10 hours 9. And from there, when I was 16, I swam Way Windermere, which is obviously England's largest lake, made a record on there. And then the following year went on to do a 4-way Lake Windermere, which was at the time, well, they've changed the course since then. It's a different course, slightly longer because of the starting point. But my record it beat actually the previous person. That was Mike Reed, actually, as you may well know, by his record by 4 hours, and it stood for many, many years. So that was a really good swim. I really enjoyed that. And then you asked about the 10-year break. When I was by the age of 17, I was number 1 in the UK in terms of long distance swimming, the top British swimmer, and at the time there doing all these long swims. At the time I lived in Blackpool, obviously born and bred there, and then I moved down to the best university for sports, as you probably know, Loughborough University, where I did a PE Sports Science and History degree. Obviously an amazing place to be for sports. So whilst I didn't do any sort of record breaking swims, as it were, I was always still swimming. And then we're going back to about 1980, crikey, going back in time now. I was a head swim coach in Canada back in 91. So I'd had this like 10-year break, but I was still swimming, doing all the university swims, just not doing anything in the open water, by which time the open water was getting a little bit hotter. If you think back to these days, the water temperature, for example, in the Channel, even in June, is amazingly warm because of global warming. In those days, you're looking at temperatures being round about, well, it was warm when it was about 10, 12 degrees, which shows how the waters have got hotter. You've gone mute there. That's it.
Sorry about that. When you came back, all of a sudden you were doing butterfly. What were you thinking?
Well, I've been living in Canada just outside Toronto, and they have amazing facilities over there. The open air pools. I used to go downtown and just go in the pool, swim. And I'd always wanted, after my decade of front crawl swimming, I'd actually said to my parents again, I'd like to do the Channel fly. And well, I won't quote exactly what was said. I'm one of these people, when I've got it into my head, believe it can be done, I'll go and do it. So when I was in Canada, I went down and I started swimming fly up and down in the open air pool. And it just developed from there, so that when I came back to the UK, I went and obviously did my favourite lake, which is Windermere. And that was back in 1991. I did the length of Windermere, 6 hours, 7 minutes on butterfly, the first ever butterfly swim. And I believe today that it still stands as a record. And then from there, obviously, it was the Lake Ullswater, two-way Coniston, building up to the Channel in the 2000s. You've gone again.
Sorry. Had you met Vicky Keith in Toronto, who was the first to do butterfly? Did she somehow inspire you?
I'd not met Vicky. The coach I had at the Masters Swimming Club used to belong to the same club and used to be part of coaching with Vicky. And obviously all the exhibitions they had there was always Vicky's name, and it was inspiring to know that somebody had done it. And I just thought, right, okay, let's go and do the Channel fly. I want to go and do it. Went training, and I have met Vicky, funnily enough, because I used to go back to Canada when I moved back to the UK. I went to see her and met up, and there's a lovely photograph somewhere of me and her and the coach Lee at the time.
And describe your life over the last few years. You've remained heavily involved in swimming and coaching. Give everybody an idea of what it is you're doing.
Yes, I've all through my life, where it's been teaching, coaching, and that's not just limited to swimming. It's about helping people, looking at what they need, their problems, what they fear, to actually get them to where they want to go. So in other words, to get them to the result, to the goal that they want to achieve. Obviously, in some cases with swimmers, obviously that's the English Channel. So it's about looking, first of all, what is it? And this applies to anything, whether it be business, sports, or education. It's about looking at, okay, what do they need to do? What do they want? And what do they fear? With Channel swimming, a lot of it's about, about the mind. Some people, it's about believing in themselves. And if they don't have that belief in themselves, no matter what swimming ability they've got, then they're not going to get to their desired result. So it's about giving them a proven process, a step-by-step process that they can build on to actually achieve their goals, their dreams. And as I say, that's not just in swimming, it's in business, whether that be somebody looking at starting a business, somebody in business, leadership, executive coaching, etc. It's about getting to the end, the results that we all want to achieve.
I hear over the years, everyone has their own kind of view on this thing, which is, when the swimmer gets in the water to start the Channel, for example, people will say they've done the physical work, and at that point it's 90% mental. What's your view on those kinds of statements or that perspective on the world?
It's about preparing, getting the foundations, building the swimming foundations. And as you rightly say, when you get in the water, as well as the physical aspect, it is the mental aspect of it. That you only need to have that one little block and all the training that you've been doing just kind of goes out the wall. I can give you an example using myself. Back in 2000s, I'd done, just before, I'd attempted the channel on butterfly first of all, and I'd done this 18-hour battle in Windermere, and unfortunately I'd pulled my shoulder. I was only a mile from the end, and it was my shoulder was really, really bad. 4 weeks later, I was in the channel going great guns, but then it started to play up again, and obviously I chose to abort it because I wanted to do it properly, to swim it all the way on proper butterfly. For me, it was a learning, because I believe there is no failure, only fear. You get a learning from it. And then 2 years later, obviously I started relay swims, and then 2 years later went into the channel. Now, in terms of the mindset, went in the water, carried on working towards the first goal, which was the feed. Strangely enough, about halfway, and it shows on my map, the butterfly channel map, which is behind me, but probably can't see. When the pilots grade where you are on the swim, you can see how much you do and how little you do, or whatever. At this particular moment in time, I started thinking, oh gosh, my shoulder's hurting. This is where it went before. And I flipped into this, gosh, it's going to go again. Somehow changed my mindset, got out of it and carried on. Obviously went on to make a world record. But the map actually shows at that moment in time, the mind which had been playing at me that my shoulder was going to go, the distance had decreased considerably. So the mindset is very, very important.
You basically, when your mind went, you slowed down appreciably between feeds.
Yes, I did. And in my head, my shoulder was starting to hurt again. However, I looked at thinking, right, okay, because I always like to see the end product, to see it done. Managed to get out of that mode, and then obviously carried on and was very, very successful, as you know.
In your experience, how do swimmers come out of that depression or that funk or that mental bad spot in a swim? Now, in your case, you'd been to the rodeo a few times, so you had some experiences. But in the sport, we're getting more and more people who are kind of arriving at the English Channel as kind of novices, and they hit these tough spots, and they don't really kind of know how to get out of them.
That's, as I say, that's where some mindset coaching comes in. It's not just about the physical coaching element of it. It's about the mindset coaching, going through those pain barriers and having somewhat, to a degree, prepared for those. I can remember doing my first ever 5-mile swim in Blackpool open air pool, which was really, really cold. And that 5 miles, I went through a pain barrier, and I can remember it now. Obviously, after that, I'd done a lot of swimming, and 5 miles kind of went into nothing. But when new swimmers hit that pain barrier, it's about being prepared mentally as well, so that a mindset coach can actually give them something to actually focus their minds on when they're going through it, you know, to prepare them.
And how can a swimmer tell the difference between normal enjoyable pain and their arm falling off?
Again, it's down to training. I've been there. My arms have fallen off. I remember when my 3-way Windermere, I'd swam. My shoulder went. It was appalling conditions, and I'd swam for 20-odd miles with a pulled shoulder. And I just believed, luckily, my shoulder didn't drop off, because I was only 16 at the time, so I recovered quickly. But it's about knowing yourself, about having prepared physically, mentally, having done that knowledge, and actually having, the other very, very important thing is having the team with you, because as you know, team together, everyone achieves more. And it's about having the right people behind you, supporting you as well on the boats. If you don't have the right people, you know, for example, silly little things like people on the boat need to be able to withstand seasickness. I've been on swims when they've taken crews on, support people, and people have actually been green on the deck when there've been absolutely no help whatsoever. So it's important to have the right team behind you, and that team who actually knows to push you and to know the swimmers. So my dad has been on all my swims up until about 10 years ago. He got a little bit older, a little bit more arthritic, but he knew that he could push me when I was tired, but he also knew when to call it a day. So, for example, on that first butterfly swim, him and I knew that it was time to call it a day. He knew. It was just literally physically my shoulder had gone, and I didn't want to swim it freestyle. I wanted to do it fly. So that was it. Came out and lived to fight another day, so to speak.
Okay, let me change the subject and take you halfway around the world, or all the way around the world. You and I almost met in New Zealand in a man versus woman relay. In the end, I couldn't go, but I was invited by good friends, Honoree Penny Palfrey and her husband, Chris. Tell us about the experience in New Zealand. Spend as much time as you want about the superiority of men over time versus women, whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, there's a little bit of a story behind that, because as you'll probably be aware, all the swims I've done with the team have been all female swims, excepting obviously the medley swim, when I had 4 people, obviously 2 males, 2 females. But on the New Zealand swim, I was going to go over to New Zealand with the team that I usually have, the women I'd always swam with, and because of one thing and another, some family problems with one and then financial aspects with another, I then had to branch out and think outside the box, who else could help? And a friend of mine knew Penny, and I got in touch with Penny, and she was able to get from her side a couple of other swimmers. And then it so happened, I think the competitive element of a husband, that's where you became involved. I didn't go out to plan this male v female. It just happened because Steve then ended up thinking, right, Penny's doing it, so we'll get a team of men, and then it just went from there. Really, it was a really nice swim. It was for me, it was a nice warm swim, nice calm swim, and yeah, I just wanted initially to go over to actually be the first female team to actually achieve the 3 ways. And it was great though, because Penny, obviously, we all swam together. Philip Rush, obviously, kindly organised it. And then Steve got together the lads, and it all went from there. And you missed out, Ned.
Okay, you have to paint the picture for us. This is like a 2 or 3 day swim, or so. This is a long swim. And in the last hour of the swim, the men's team and the women's team was quite close together. And I understand it got a little bit competitive at the very end.
It did get a little bit competitive. And I do have to say, Penny and a couple of other swimmers and the guys as well. Yes, it did. But anyhow, hey ho, a few seconds to go. I reckon though, if the water had been colder, put it down, lowered it by 10 degrees, I'll tell you now, the blokes wouldn't have been anywhere near.
You had an interesting year or two at one point, and I want to talk about how you were feeling. So you had a triple Loch Ness. If people will be happy their entire life to do a single Loch Ness. You had the 4-way Windermere. You were given the MBE by the Queen. You ended up with a doctorate, and you got in the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame shortly after that. What a year!
Well, we're going back a few years. I mean, I'd always done, the great thing about all my swims is that right from an early age, I'd done all of it for charity. I've raised thousands over the year for charity. Always been a passion swimming, passion raising money and helping people. And that's what I got my MBE for, like you say, in 2006 for services to swimming and charity. It was the same year as well that at Loughborough University conferred upon me an honorary doctorate for all my achievements and obviously the swimming and the charitable work. My background is in education. My master's is in sports science, physical education and sports science. Also elated that year to get into the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. And yeah, it was great. It was a great time to go over to America to actually get that. And then you mentioned about the 3-way, the Loch Ness swim. That was actually a relay, that one, Ned. But it was the first ever relay, and that was cold. swimming, people think, like, okay, a relay swim is not as hard as a solo swim. It's a different ball game because you've got to swim, then get out, get warm, get back in again. And even though we always do it as a traditional team, as in 6 swimmers, that 5 hours in between goes fast. The length, you know, the longer the swim goes on. So when you're talking about swimming 30 odd hours in Loch Ness, that 5 hours becomes very, very short after a while.
But presumably in the 5 hours, you've got the use of the sauna facilities, you've got the massage tables. You know, you're completely relaxed and comfortable during those 5 hours.
How do you get all that on a boat? We had one of these cabin boats, and the guys, one of the swimmers, knew the RNLI guys who drove it, and it was really, really quite rough. So all we got to do was eat a little bit, cook a little bit. There was no massage or anything else like that. It was a case of just, for some of them, even on the loch, it was a case of not being sick. I mean, touch wood, I've always been absolutely fine on water, whether it be lakes or seas, but some of them were throwing up.
So
and
for
about
that
relaxing.
year, for that year, did you just smile a lot, or did you play the lottery every day? Or, I mean, that was an incredible year, Julie.
Well, it was, and you know, I never expected that. It was just something that came from all the swimming, all the charity I'd done, all the, you know, and with the achievements. So yes, it was great to, you know, to go over there. Were you there that year? I can't remember.
I was not there in Florida that year. It was
right.
it was yourself, Merv Sharp, Nora was there.
That's right.
I'm trying to think of the other names. They're escaping me.
I know Merv was there and his wife Rose, and yeah, it was really great. Yeah.
We'll be interviewing Merv shortly in a couple of days.
Oh right, brilliant.
Looking back at your time, very active in actually doing the swim, who were the people you looked up to? Who were your role models? Who, or, you know, in the nice way, who were the characters?
Well, as you say, I was 15 when I first swam the channel, and it was a case of just knowing that somebody had done it, as in the amazing Captain Matthew Webb, and obviously Gertrude Erdelay, the First Lady, to do it. In those days, going back to 79, there was not many, there was 2 pilots at the time, 2 pilots, and that's the growth has been in channel swimming. One of whom was Val Noakes, who sadly is not around anymore, and who took me, and then Ray Brickle, Reggie's dad. At the time, he was taking Cindy Nicholas, so there was kind of him. So it was a case of believing, you know, learning from different avenues. There weren't channel swim coaches out there. There weren't coaches. It was a case of doing own research, and there was no Google. You know, nowadays you can just plug into Google and find anything you want to do. It was a case of learning by doing, and as I say, knowing that somebody had done it, it was just like an incentive to go and do it. You know, again, it comes down to believing in yourself that you can do it.
And in your time coaching, give us some examples of the most enjoyable swimmers or the most inspirational swimmers that you've had the pleasure of dealing with. And this one you can use names.
There's been so many, to be honest with you. I got asked once that question because I lectured at Loughborough University for 16 years in the swimming aspect of it. And I always got asked, you know, who was your favourite swimmer? And people expected you to say, you know, the fastest or the one that had achieved the most. And I always said the person who achieved the most there was somebody who was actually able to swim 2 lengths in a timed swim because she could not swim. And I managed to teach her to swim. So that was really, really rewarding. The same, I think, applies to another guy a few years ago. One in particular, he wanted to go and, as everybody, you know, many people do it for charity. And this guy, he wasn't able to swim. He could swim probably about 400 metres, I think, in a swimming pool. He built it up, and he was able from the September. He did have a background. He had an army background, so obviously he had the right mental approach and everything. Listened to it. We worked together, and he did a 6-hour 6-hour qualifying swim in by the end of May. And at the time, the end of May was pretty cold, so he did really, really well. And his channel swim, albeit he didn't complete it, he got within 2 miles, and unfortunately the weather changed, but it was just a great achievement. He raised thousands of pounds, and he got so much. He wrote a book actually at it about how far you can actually come. So it's not about just, I always say to people, it's not about, you know, the end result. It's about the journey you become in the process of actually going there, if that makes sense.
You mentioned the Army mindset. How applicable is the mindset of somebody who's done an Ironman triathlon, or somebody who's run 60 miles? Is it a similar mindset for you for channel swimming?
There's a similar mindset, different physical skills in a way, because obviously, I mean, I've met runners who try and go in the swimming pool, or rugby players who go in, you know, successful in their own sport, can't swim very well. However, in something like an Ironman, or like you say, the Army, it's about getting that, to keep going, that determination, that motivation, and having a structure. If you don't have a structure, forget it. It's no point just thinking, right, it's like a boat, isn't it? If you don't have a goal to enter, steps in between, it's pointless. It just drifts off. So it's about having that structure. So somebody like, for example, in the Army will have been used to motivating themselves, obviously following instructions. It's not a case, I don't believe in coaching like with a stick. It's about like an incentive, working with the person, because at the end of the day, if a person coaches, this is where some go wrong. If a person coaches and that person relies on the coach all the time, when they get in the middle of the channel, you've got to do it yourself as well as being with your team, if that makes sense, Ned.
It does. You've been around the world. You've done a lot of great swims. You've set an incredible number of records. You're still a young woman. So either what's the next big one? And promise to keep it a secret. Won't tell us all. Or looking back, what's a swim you wanted to do and never got to, or never organized?
Looking back, it's difficult, because I think all the swims I've done have all been different in their own ways. And nowadays, there's all kinds of different swims, all kinds of different events out there. So it's opened up to a whole new world. Obviously, the last big swim I did was now, 9 years ago, when I swam Manhattan Butterfly Round It. Obviously, it was great sightseeing swim, I called it. But there's never been really any regrets about what I've done, what I've not done. I think one of the ones was, I did actually when I was 17, I did book in to do a 3-way channel swim. And unfortunately, the weather was not suitable, never got off. And at the time, I would have been the first person if I'd done it to be successful. I never returned because of, obviously, then I went to university and progressed down another road.
How soul-destroying was being weathered out of that triple?
Just one of those things, really. It's work hard. I've done all the training, and you know, it's one of the challenges of channel swimming. You train, and then obviously getting into the mindset. If the weather's not good, which it always seemed to, the bad weather always had a tendency to follow me. So, for example, when I was 15, and bearing in mind in those days there wasn't many pilots or swimmers doing it, I was supposed to initially get off in the middle of July. And at the time I lived in Blackpool. First time we didn't get off, we went backwards and forwards. And eventually, on August the 19th, in fact, we were all packed up, ready to come back home. And my dad spoke to Val and basically was given he said, well, there's a 50-50 chance. Do you want to take it? And he said, yes. So I was woken up and I was like, oh, we're going home already? He says, no, we're swimming the channel. So obviously it wasn't a brilliant day, but I got across in 10 hours 9. I was lucky then. Sometimes nowadays, if you don't get off, it's just one of those things. And if things are meant to be, they're meant to be, is my approach.
Well, Dr. Julie Bradshaw, MBE, we thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
The bad weather isn't following you. Otherwise, the window would have opened up, the flower would have blown over, and it would have been raining on you. So those days are over. The weather's good now.
I was going to say that's great then. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you both again soon.
Take care.